I have to say, if nothing else, I'm going to be enthusiastic tonight. I'm very happy to be alive after having flown in, so I have that kind of joy of life in me right now. Last night, flew from Dallas to Little Rock. Got to Little Rock, the pilot said, nope, turn around, went back to Dallas. And you can see why, looking down, it looked like, it didn't look like anything you'd want to land in. So, but the other reason I'm going to be enthusiastic with you is I am absolutely 100% convinced Catholic radio is the great evangelizing treasure that we now have. We're in the midst of a Catholic media revolution. You're right on the cutting edge of it when you start talking about having a radio station locally, and I am 100% a cheerleader. So you're going to get some cheerleading from me, if nothing else. This was going to be a better talk until I ate the cordon bleu, and now it's going to be a little sleepier than I was thinking, because that was really, really good. The Lord entrusted Himself to us, to human beings, and one of the aspects of that we sometimes maybe don't fully appreciate is that means that He entrusted Himself to human technology. That He gives us His Word, His very Word, in the technology that we invented. Books and writing and all that stuff, that's just human invention. And so this is a very powerful indication that the Lord intends us to turn everything to His use, turn everything to His glory. So, like I said, I'm going to be a cheerleader for radio. But we're talking about a little bit about technology and about where we are technologically. And all of this, I want to weave in one of my two heroes. We all have saints who we have a devotion to. Catholics know about having a devotion. But some people have a saint who's also their hero. And I have two of those. Two people that to me they're just heroic. The first one, and you have to invite me back to talk about her, is Joan of Arc. Mark Twain said Joan of Arc was the greatest human being that ever lived. And Mark Twain did not like Catholics, and he really didn't like human beings. So it's extraordinary that he said that about Joan of Arc. And Mark Twain wrote a beautiful book about Joan of Arc. This is a pretty anti-Christian guy. Totally fell in love with Joan of Arc. And everywhere you go, like I get to talk about Joan of Arc, you meet people who go, I know her too. I know Joan of Arc is a hero. This young woman who gave her life at 19 didn't even know why. This God was requiring of this of her, but transformed the entirety of human history because of what she did. But another time, that's a teaser. My other hero is St. Peter. So I'm going to talk about St. Peter tonight. I'm going to mix some stories about St. Peter in. And the one thing I got to tell you is I want to challenge a kind of view of Peter and the other apostles that modern people sometimes have of these bumbling, goofy apostles. They just can't get anything right. These are 12 of the greatest people who ever lived, and Peter himself is a good and great man. He's both of those things. A lot of times we're one or the other, but he's a good and great man. So I'm going to be a cheerleader for Peter a little bit too. So I'm going to be a cheerleader for radio. I'm going to talk a little bit about the role of technology in our lives, and I'm hoping to leave you feeling like you love Peter more than you did when you came. It is an extraordinary world that we live in with technology. It's amazing that I can be in California, get on an airplane, and a few hours later, I'm back in America. I knew it. I knew that's how you all felt. I was on the test, and I knew it. That's all right. We know we're better than everybody else. That's one of the things about being in California, is that no matter how much we fail, we still know we're better than everybody else. So it's a beautiful quality that we have, Californians. But the thing is that we're on the cutting edge of things, and I look at you as kind of backwards, to be honest. Like you still believe in things like boys and girls, and we're way we left that in the past. Of course, there are very serious consequences to our surrender of reality in the state of California. And California is where they make all the movies and the TV shows and all that kind of stuff. So it's a sick kind of message that California has been sending out to the rest of the world since about 1925. But we got to be in that space. We got to occupy that space. And we see there are movie people who are doing it. You know, I think of Mark Wahlberg making that beautiful movie about Father Stu. Did you see the Father Stu movie?
Yes.
That was pretty good, right? That was a good movie. And he's a guy that saw the Virgin Mary when he crashed his motorcycle. And it wasn't played for laughs. It wasn't played for, oh, those dumb Christians. It was played like, no, that's serious. That happens. People see the Virgin Mary. I think I saw her last night trying to fly in. She couldn't land. As a Californian, you feel sensitive. I have a daughter who works in Hollywood, and she works for two wonderful men who make really good stuff. But you don't think as a Catholic parent, oh, I hope one of my kids works in Hollywood someday. Because it's a rough place, producing a lot of things that shouldn't be produced. But one day I remember I was the editor of the diocesan newspaper in San Diego. It was called the Sun Cross. And I had that job for about almost 12 years. And I came to that job because I went to Boston College and I got a bachelor's degree in theology. And then I went to the University of Massachusetts and I got a master's degree in English literature. And the same month that I got my master's degree in English literature, we had our second kid. And I realized I need to make some money, and I have a degree in theology and literature. What am I going to do with that? That was a serious mistake, but I went, you go work for a bishop. So I went to work for the Bishop of San Diego and got into Catholic media in 1996. That's when I started working at the newspaper. 1997 is the key year for Catholic media in the United States. And I'm going to tell you about that. How in 1997, you can point to that year and go, that's where everything changed. But I remember driving in San Diego the day that we got a Catholic radio station. And I had been working for more than a decade trying to share the gospel and share the sacramental life of the church and all of it on a newspaper. And then there it is, just blaring from my car speaker. Because my car speakers only have one setting, blaring. I think I went straight from Led Zeppelin to Catholic radio. And so I just had this sense, like there it is, that's where we have to be. We've got to be out in public with this. We can't just be making newspapers and magazines that we share with one another. That's important, and I don't denigrate that. But then I started to move in my life towards Catholic radio. And technically the word for what I did is stalking. And I just, everywhere the Catholic radio people were, I would show up and start talking because I wanted to work in Catholic radio. Eventually, it was obnoxious enough that, because obnoxious is one of the qualities that really works on the air, they put me on the air. And so I started doing a show, and then Patrick Coffin, who some of you may remember, was the host of Catholic Answers Live, and he decided to go on and do other things. And it's all, I just, at the moment, with those, just perfect. I started my dream job at the age of 52. And I love to tell my kids that. You don't have to have your dream job now. Maybe you'll get it when you're 52. And I did, and I love it. And I love working for Catholic Answers. I love doing what we do. And my job, people say to me very often, people say, I don't understand how you can stay so calm and peaceful when people are attacking you or asking really hard questions or challenging the Catholic faith. And I say, because my job is to say, thank you for the call, Jimmy. And then he has to answer the question. So I never feel any fear about anything, because all I do is push the button and go, thank you so much for your call. And soon we'll be getting those calls from Little Rock, Arkansas. So I want to start, before I get into how Peter fits into all this, I just want to tell you one story of something that happened on the air at Catholic Answers Live one time. And I should tell you, in case you don't know about Catholic Answers Live, there was a lawyer named Carl Keating back in the 1970s, came out of Mass in San Diego, where we are, and on the windshield of every car in that Catholic church's parking lot was a pamphlet about why Catholics were going to hell. and you needed to be a fundamentalist Christian. You couldn't, it was Jack Chick type stuff. Do any of you know Jack Chick? Yeah, some of you do. The former Protestants all know Jack Chick. Yeah.
We actually received our first hate mail.
From Jack Chick?
From the organization. Just a few months ago, I checked the P.O. box, and it was those exact same
things
that Carl Keating had.
Right. Oh, yeah. So Carl, what he did, and he said, well, let me respond to that. So the next week, when they were in church, he put a pamphlet on why the Catholic Church was founded by Jesus Christ, and it was the road to salvation on each and every one of their cars. And he didn't want to put his home address or his name on it. He wanted to have, so he said it just came to him. He wrote Catholic Answers, and he got himself a P.O. box, and all the mail went to the P.O. box. And what amazed him was, people started writing, going, I actually didn't know this, what you said about the Catholic Church. I had never, what does this mean? What does that mean? They wanted to know. And he started these correspondences with people, and that grew into eventually a full-time ministry of what's called apologetics. And so he's the founder, he's one of the founders of the new apologetics movement. There was, back in the old days with people like Cardinal Newman or people like G.K. Chesterton, people like Frank Sheed, we had this robust apologetics movement. Then with ecumenism, with the ecumenical movement, people started to wonder, is apologetics out? Like, should we stop doing that? And it was only with people like Carl that it started to come back. It started to, and we can never be done with apologetics. We just have to do it in ways that meet the needs of our age and all that kind of thing. So Catholic Answers explains and defends the Catholic faith. That's what we do. And Carl was a visionary. And so he was constantly getting these ideas. And one day, this is back in the early 1990s, Patrick Madrid was in the office. I don't know if you know Patrick Madrid, a wonderful writer and radio host. They're all sitting there in the office, and Carl Keating comes in and goes, there's this new thing. It's called the internet. And I'm going to get a website. And he registered Catholic.com. So we are the owners of Catholic.com because of Carl Keating. We are the second most visited Catholic website in the world. The first one has an advantage because they have the Pope. It's the Vatican, all right? But we're second after the Vatican, and you think Catholic.com, the Vatican would want that. And we've made clear to the Vatican they can have it if they want it for a mid-seven-figure number. It's there. So thus far, no interest. So we're going to keep doing Catholic.com. And the whole idea of Catholic.com is to get your questions answered about the Catholic faith. You just type in a question, and it gives you an answer. And then we developed publishing and the radio show, and for a while we did a TV show on EWTN. Maybe we'll start that again, I don't know. We got podcasts, we had everything, which we're on TikTok. We just try to use every medium to explain and defend the Catholic faith. Well, in 1996, Carl had the idea that they needed to start doing a radio show. To set the stage for you, in 1996, there were 7 Catholic radio stations in the United States in 1996. There were 1,500 Protestant radio stations in the United States. 7 Catholic radio stations. Somebody was dropping the ball. And it wasn't our Protestant brothers and sisters. They were there. And many of you probably remember those days. As a Catholic, if you wanted to listen to Christian music, if you wanted to listen to just somebody talking about the Bible, you were probably listening to a Protestant radio station. I used to listen to the Calvary Chapel guys, and I remember one day they got the question, what is the whore of Babylon in the Bible? And Pastor Chuck said, well, that refers to the Catholic Church. And I was like, well, no, Pastor Chuck, it doesn't. And that you just had a sense that as much as we love Pastor Chuck and all these other people who will talk, that's not right. And that needs to be corrected. And we needed our own radio stations. Well, what happened in 1997? In 1997, there was this, one of them was a pizza guy, one of them was a home builder, and the other guy was a dentist, I think, and they all wanted to start Catholic radio stations. At the same time, right around the time Pope John Paul was in Denver, I think they all actually might have seen John Paul when he was in Denver, and in Denver, he told Catholics in the United States, you need to do a better job using the media. And so these guys started mulling over that, and by 1997, independently, all three are ready to start Catholic radio stations. But where do you get the programming? So somehow the three of them all end up in a meeting with Mother Angelica down in Alabama. And she says, I'll tell you what, if you buy the stations, run the stations, I'll give you 24 hours a day of programming. And so that was the moment that an absolute revolution started. Today in the United States, there are more than 500 Catholic radio stations in both Spanish and English, all across the United States. It is an absolute revolution what has happened. And Catholic Answers has been there along for the ride because one of the programs Mother Angelica put in her programming was 2 hours every day of Catholic Answers Live, which is a super simple show. Just ask any question you got about the Catholic faith, and we'll answer it. One of us will answer it, me or Jimmy. It'll be Jimmy, by the way. If you listen to the show, you know. So the Catholic bishops, the United States Catholic bishops, spent tens of millions of dollars in the 1970s trying to start a Catholic radio network in the United States. They opened 0 radio stations. They could not get it together. The U.S. Catholic bishops, the USCCB. There were people who tried commercial Catholic radio, also in the 1990s and early 2000s, failed. The only thing that worked was when lay people said, I'll start the station, and this little nun said, I'll give you the program. And then an explosion. And it seems clear to me, and I truly believe this. This is a work of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit wanted us laity to do it. Not laity against the bishops or as opposed to the priests, but the laity doing their part for what the church is supposed to do. It's better for the church, for the laity to run these radio stations than for bishops to run these radio stations. For a million reasons, including all the scandals that we've been through and all the money we had to pay out over the last 20 years. But for many, many more reasons. Among them, it's our job. It's the job of the laity to do these things. And the Holy Spirit, it just seems so... I mean, how can the U.S. bishops have utterly failed at it? 2 decades of trying, they never got anything going. And then Mother Angelica and three laymen started an absolute revolution. Now, we went through all those years of the New Atheism. I think you probably remember the New Atheism of the early 2000s. Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and several other geniuses who decided that they didn't just decide there's no God. They decided that people who are religious are idiots. And they set out to prove that people who believe in God are idiots. Well, in those years, we did a lot of arguing with people on the air. And I think we had, and by and large, the New Atheism, I think, was turned back by faithful Christians who said, look, Christianity is not stupid. You can say you don't agree with it, but to say that it's stupid, no. And so we reminded the world about what Christianity is and about the intellectual life, the intellectual side of Christianity, the fact that modern science was invented in Christian societies. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why, Father Jockey's great books on science and Christianity, that science was born, that's his phrase, science was born of Christianity. So this idea that there's some division between Christianity and science, I have this idea for a t-shirt, and I'm going to make this t-shirt someday. I have not done it yet. I'm not a super organized person, but I can do this, Jimmy. But I want to get this shirt made because this shirt is actually true. What it would say is true, and I know it would drive people crazy. And it's going to say this: Galileo went to Catholic school. Because that is how Galileo got to be Galileo. This is a Christian thing. We shouldn't be ashamed of it. We shouldn't be ashamed of our relationship with science. Well, we got through all those tough years, and now we find we have far fewer challenging questions when people call. Many more curious type questions. Or, look, I see the Catholic thing, but here's my problem. Why do you all worship statues? Why do you all worship Mary? Why do you believe in purgatory? Purgatory is not in the Bible. All questions that Catholics answered 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, but people just don't know the answers. You know the Bible that says, call no man father. I love when people call us up like we never read that passage in the Bible. Like, I just want to straighten something out with you Catholics. The Bible says, call no man father. Like, do you think you're the first person that thought of that? St. Augustine wrote about that. Like, 1,500 years ago. Like, these things are not new. The Catholic Church has faced intellectual challenges for its entire existence. We have to answer them. We have to be out there in the public square answering them. And that's what's happening at Catholic Radio. So I want to tell you what happened. Well, two things. One, about 2 years ago, my producer, Darren, said to me, do you notice how many people call now and they begin their question by saying, I've been listening to Catholic Radio for about a year and I'm coming into the Catholic Church now. Like, it's not like, why do you believe in your stupid sky god? We're not getting that anymore. We're getting those more and more people going, I'm on my way. Or look, it's all settled for me, but I cannot get over this Mary thing. You know, and then we just have to help them get over the Mary thing. And that means explaining. So Darren has been pointing this out to me. So we started doing a show. We'll do it about 3 times before Easter and then about 2 times after Easter. We hold all the phones for people who are in RCIA, now OCIA. And the church changed that because clearly that needed to be fixed. Right? All these problems in the church were there. They're like, you know what we need to do? That RCIA thing, let's make that OCIA. Then everything's going to be fine. What a church we belong to, right? People are like, I don't even know what I'm in. It's either RCIA or OCIA. We don't know either, okay? And we're not going to know for a lot of years. But we should only call if you're in RCIA, OCIA. And then we'll do it after. It'll be like a mystagogia. Only call if you received your first sacraments at Easter. And we get so many people calling. Like we just fill up the lines. We can do a show where we say, only call if you don't believe in God. 2 hours on Catholic radio stations, not 1 minute without a call. Lines full the whole time. That's atheists listening to Catholic radio. There's no other way that we're getting those calls. We can do 2 hours, and this is the hardest. This is the hardest thing I do in radio. 2 hours, why are you pro-choice? Lines lit, 2 solid hours. But now, it's sad to hear some of the reasons that people will say that they're pro-choice. There's a lot of moral confusion out there. But it's really great to think all of those people were listening in their car to Catholic radio. There's something that's drawing them to it. So the other thing I wanted to tell you about is a report that was in a thing called The Pillar. The Pillar is like a Catholic news site, and they do a lot of statistical reporting on the Catholic Church. And they just did a report on the right of elect. You know the right of election? That's where all the people who are coming into the Catholic Church that year have their time with the bishop. There's a liturgy, the right of election, where they're with the bishop. And they went diocese by diocese across the United States. And 150 last year, 340 this year. You know, 78 last year, 190 this year. Now, not everywhere, it's not uniform, but enough that you go, that is statistically significant. Something is happening. And I strongly believe that has to do with the fact that we're in the world not shying away from taking the toughest questions that people can give us. And answering those questions with all the confidence that we should have, because the answers we've been working on these answers for 2,000 years. There's no question that you can ask about the Catholic Church that you can't get a reasonable answer. Now, you may not accept the answer. You know? Somebody says, well, why do you call Mary Mother of God? We say, well, who is Jesus? Well, he's God. Who's his mother? I go, okay, there's an answer to that. Why would we call Mary the Mother of God? There's an answer. Like this is something I have come to see in my current job more clearly than I ever saw it before in my life. And that is, there's just nothing to be afraid of with questions about the Catholic faith. There is no question that somebody hasn't handled 20 times. There's probably 30 saints that answered that question that you've got. 50 theologians. I mean, it's just that there's nothing new that can come up. Now, I'm not saying that everybody immediately accepts the Catholic faith. I'm just saying it's a perfectly reasonable faith. It's not like it's the most reasonable thing in the world to be Catholic because Catholicism is true. But we're not in this just to win arguments. As a matter of fact, we don't really want to win arguments. We have a saying at Catholic Answers, and probably I'm sure many other people have this saying as well, but you don't want to win an argument and lose a soul. And you can do that. You can argue someone down. You can make them feel dumb. What's the point of that? What are you doing if you do that? That's evil, is what that is. Like we want to win souls. And so Carl told me one time, Carl Keating said, there's the question the person's asking, and there's the question the person has. And the question the person has is deeper than the question that they're asking. And often the question that they have is, should I be one of these Catholics? Like in the heart of it, the reason they're asking you, why do you worship statues? Did you ever hear Patrick Madrid has the funniest thing? He gave a talk one time at Our Lady of Fatima Parish. Have you ever heard about this? Where there's Mary is standing there and the 3 children of Fatima are kneeling in front of it, and Patrick said, "This is the most Catholic church in the world. Even the statues worship statues." So I think that's one of the greatest lines. But okay, we don't worship statues, but but that answering with charity as well as clarity is winning hearts. It's working now. We're starting to see the results of this now 28-year experiment. And the fact that we can pinpoint it to that day in 1997, that those guys went back and started radio stations, and then the next year there was 20, and the next year there was 40, and then to the fact that we've got hundreds and hundreds of Catholic radio stations across this country. It's extraordinary. One time, in the middle of a pledge drive on Catholic Answers, we're trying to raise money to put the show on, because we give the show free to anybody in the world that wants it. Anybody. If the Satanists call us up and go, "We want to run your show on our," we'll say, "Okay, Satanists, you can have it." Like, we want the show to be free to anybody in the world, and it runs all over the world. If you listen to the show, people will call from Nigeria. People will call from Scandinavia. We get calls from Scandinavia now. They're starting to rethink the Catholic Church up there, I think. From New Zealand and Australia. And we used to do this thing called international calls only. One of those only called, and it was so many Filipino people, we had to stop doing it because it was just like all Filipinos. It was like, nobody else can get in here. Like the most Catholic people in the world. So, I've never been to the Philippines, but man, it must be Catholic there, because they were just burning up the phone line. But, so it goes out free, so we're doing this pledge drive because we have to raise the money to pay for it. And this guy calls in. And nobody who was listening that day, I see people now, and I tell this story, and they go, "I was listening that day. I heard that. That was the most amazing thing I've ever heard." So we're doing this, hey, call and support Catholic Answers Live, blah, 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 blah. And this guy calls up, because we do our regular job in between asking for money. And he's from Turkey. The call's from Turkey. So, hey, anonymous from Turkey, welcome. What's your question? And he says, I started listening to an American Catholic radio station on the internet. This was a station in Michigan. He started listening to it out in rural Turkey. And he goes, "I think I'm a Catholic, but I don't know what to do about it because I'm Muslim, and everybody I know is Muslim. And if I convert, my family will kill me." He said this on the air. And so for about 15 minutes, we talked this guy through what he had to do and what he could do. For example, if you are in a place where you'll be killed for your faith, you don't have to go out and tell everybody I'm Catholic now. But if somebody says to you, "Is Jesus God?" you can't say, No, Jesus is not God. Because you can't deny the Lord. Even to the shedding of our blood, we can't deny who Jesus is. So we sat there on the phone talking with this guy from Turkey, and the whole time, We brought 2 apologists in, and they sat there and we went through this, and it was one of the most magnificent things of this guy realizing he really could become Catholic. He could take a trip, for example, into a city and find a priest and tell him that he wanted to be baptized. And he could go back to his town, and he was so relieved to find out he didn't have to tell anybody in the town. There's no moral obligation to tell people in the town that you're Catholic now. So it was just such a touching and powerful thing. And the whole time I'm thinking, this dude is in rural Turkey, and some people in Michigan started a Catholic radio station. They put their radio station on the internet. This guy heard us and called California. And so, we can see who's listening to Catholic answers on the internet. And there's people in Saudi Arabia and Egypt. They're listening. They go on the website and they listen. Because maybe they have the same thing. Maybe something has changed in them and they have become open to the Catholic faith. It's extraordinary what's happening. So when you have the radio station here, the radio station here is not just for the people of Little Rock and surrounding areas. It's not just for the people of Arkansas or the people of the United States. We are on a mission to bring every single soul to Christ, and you have no idea what souls are going to be touched when you do that. And I can testify to it again and again and again. We have seen it. We get calls and then they tell us where they are, in Duluth or I'm in New Orleans or wherever. And quite regularly we get calls where it says, it'll say something like, somewhere in South Dakota or somewhere in Colorado. And I'm like, why did you not want to give us your town? And they're like, no, I'm a trucker. I listen to the radio station whenever I pass this part of town. These guys are driving trucks back and forth across the United States, and they know where the Catholic radio station is. We had people who flew into a town, and the rental car, somebody left it on the radio station, the local Catholic radio station, and they became Catholic because that car, somebody left it on that station, and they turned it on, and they couldn't. It's not just one person either. I can think of 3 right now. One of them, it actually happened in his own car. He doesn't know who put it on Catholic radio. He doesn't know. He was actually a Protestant minister. And it was on that station, and he started listening, and he was like, I think I'm a Catholic. And he came into the Catholic, at a great cost to himself too, because his livelihood was in this. And this is a man who sacrificed everything to say, no, it's the truth. I gotta come in. I can't stay out, knowing that it's the truth. This is miracle after miracle after miracle that's happening out there. People who were on their way to get an abortion and didn't do it because of what they heard on a Catholic radio station. People who were on their way to commit suicide. There's a young woman who called and told us she was ready to commit suicide, was sitting there and in the car, and started listening. And this was on a Catholic radio station. You know what came on? The Rosary came on. I had a Protestant lady tell me one time, I never knew that that's how you pray. No one ever taught me how to pray, and I just heard the Rosary, and I was like, oh, this is prayer. These people are praying. This isn't just like listening to preaching or reading the Bible. She had all of that stuff. No one ever taught her how you pray, and she knew when she heard the Rosary, that's what prayer sounds like. I got to do that. I got to be part of that. But I want to tell you a little bit about Peter just to get to the root of why we got to do this and why I'm so excited that you're doing it here. Because this is not a Catholic part of the country. I don't know if you know that. But coming from where I come from, this is not a big Catholic area. Somebody was telling me maybe 7% of the population is Catholic. Does that sound about right? 7% of the population? Is that high?
That's high.
That's high? Oh, how many of the Catholics are Catholic? Let's start there. About 50%? Was that what we're... That would be higher than in California. The Oklahoma Catholic radio, that's 4% Catholic in Oklahoma. It's the least Catholic state, and they got a radio I don't know how they did it. I honestly don't know how they did it. But this is where it's got to be. We have to be in places like Los Angeles, where the media people are, We have to be in places like Little Rock, where many, many people have a predetermined idea of what a Catholic is, and they're going to be shocked when they turn on that radio and find out, no, that's not what Catholicism is at all. It's not what I thought it was. Or in some cases, it is what I thought it was, but that's the truth. That's the truth that I need. So why do this? Why are we doing this? And this is where I want to talk about my hero, St. Peter, for a little bit. Peter is a good man. And I'm going to tell you 2 reasons why Peter is a good man. I know before he even meets Jesus, Peter's a good man. The first reason is, we know from the Gospels that Peter, before he had ever even heard of Jesus, Peter and Andrew, James and John left their boats on the Sea of Galilee and walked all the way down the Jordan River to listen to John. Because they thought, maybe this is the Messiah. Let's go hear John. So this is somebody who's already a very good, faithful Jewish man. He's looking for the Messiah before Andrew ever says to him those magnificent words. We have found the Messiah. You know, the words that every Jewish man has been waiting to hear for 1,200 years. And Andrew had found it. And then Jesus loves Peter, apparently just gets a kick out of him from the first time he meets him, because their very first meeting he gives him a nickname. He calls him Rocky. And he did. And then, of course, Jesus goes out and fasts, and Peter and Andrew, James and John go back to their boats, and then that's where the Synoptic Gospels start. Come with me and I'll make you fishers of men. And they know who this is. They met him. They know he's the Messiah. That's why Mark says, immediately they left their nets and they followed him. You don't do that if you don't know who that person is. Immediately they left their nets and followed. But the other reason I say Peter was a good man is he lived with his mother-in-law. I don't even know where his wife was. Like, did she run off? We don't know. We don't know. All we know is his mother-in-law was there. And kind of complaining. You know, I'm sick, I can't get up. Jesus is like, go make dinner. And heals her. Peter's a good man. And I say this is a very important thing, because we sometimes, especially among fundamentalist Protestants, or Baptist-type Protestants, or more spiritual type Protestantism, we love these stories of, I was a broken sinner, and then Jesus came into my life. Most people, that's not what happened. And the reason those stories can be damaging is we forget that good people need Jesus too. Because you know what Jesus does when he comes into the life of a terrible sinner like St. Matthew, who didn't even stand up when the Messiah walked in the room? Totally transforms that life. Totally transforms that life. An apostle, an evangelist, a martyr. Do you know what Jesus does when he comes into the life of a good person like Peter, who loves his mother-in-law and is searching for the Messiah? Same exact thing, total transformation. He goes from being a good Jewish man to being a man, when his shadow passes over crippled people, they get up and walk. Every single one of us needs the exact same thing from Jesus. Total transformation. You cannot stay the same after you meet him. Or you can, like the rich young ruler, who had so many possessions. He got the exact same offer that Matthew got. Come, follow me. He got the exact same offer that Peter got. Leave your nets and follow me. To the rich young ruler, sell all you have, give it to the poor, come follow me. He was being called to be an apostle, just like it. It's the exact same thing. The very basics of Christian life. Let go of the world, come cling to me. That is the most basic spiritual action of the Christian life. To let go of the world and to attach ourselves to Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the living God. And the rich young man couldn't do it. So meeting Jesus is the most important thing that can happen in our lives, and it doesn't do anything unless we choose to answer the call to follow. Meeting Jesus does not transform people's lives. That's not how this works. Jesus meets thousands of people whose lives are not transformed by him. There's that free will thing where we have to go, okay, I'll follow. And that's what Peter did for 3 years, followed Jesus. Followed him around place to place, becoming more and more like him as he did so. At the beginning of the Gospels, the Pharisees say to Peter, why does your master eat with tax collectors and sinners? And Peter's like, frankly, I have no idea why he eats. I mean, he doesn't say that, but you get that. That's the implication, right? The apostle said, Peter, not a clue at the beginning of the 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, Peter is a transformed person. He's a different person. Jesus tells him he's going to Jerusalem to die. And Peter says, I'll go die with you. Which, by the way, I think is the worst thing Peter ever said. Honestly, I'm not joking. I think that's the worst. Not, I don't know this man. Not denying him 3 times. The worst thing Jesus ever said is, Peter ever said to Jesus is, I'll go die with you. And I want to talk about that. And that's how I'm going to end my talk tonight. So just one more hour and then I'll get to that. But you think you love the sound of your own voice. I am a professional. I started making my living. That transformation, that willing transformation, makes Peter into a different person than he was. And the high point of that life with Jesus happens on Holy Thursday, when Peter receives communion. This is what Jesus has been calling them. This is my body, this is my blood. This is what he's been preparing them for. Jesus goes around all the time, like he'll heal a leper, and the leper will be like, I'm healed. And Jesus will be like, don't tell anybody. And the leper goes, all right, and then goes and tells everybody, right? This is how the gospel. Well, why does Jesus constantly say, don't tell anybody? There's a variety of reasons, but the primary reason, I think, is pretty obvious. He's not ready to die. He can't go to the cross yet because he hasn't finished preparing the apostles. He needs 3 years to prepare them. Seminarians need 4, but they don't have Jesus, okay? I mean, they do have Jesus. I'm sorry, I should have said they don't have Jesus. I think in at least 40% of our seminaries, they do have Jesus. So that preparation is the thing that Jesus does. Jesus doesn't write a book. He doesn't write a gospel. He doesn't write a letter. None of it. He prepares people. He prepares a church. That's what he does. What he gives the world is a church. What the church gives the world is the Bible. And the saints. And the sacraments. All things that it received from the Savior himself. Okay, so that's the peak. The Second Vatican Council says this is the source and the summit of our ecclesial life is communion. That's where our life as Catholics begins, the very beginning of it. That's where all the nutrients we need for this shared life we have comes from. And that's the thing we're going to. You're never going to get higher than communion. There is nothing higher than communion. It's just that in heaven, that communion will be visible and experienced. Here, we only know it by faith. Or mostly we only know it by faith. Sometimes we have other intimations that God gives us a gift. But mostly it's on faith. But the quickest way to heaven, as quite a few saints have said, is to receive the Eucharist. When you receive the Eucharist, you receive heaven in your body. But this does not end Peter's life. And this is what I want to get to. Because he meets Jesus. He spends 3 years consciously trying to imitate Jesus and become like him. When he's ready, he receives communion. And then he spends the next 30 years of his life calling other people to receive communion. His whole life becomes a mission on behalf of communion. And that's why Catholic radio is not the same as Protestant radio. The purpose of Protestant radio is for you to hear the Word. The purpose of Catholic radio is for you to hear the Word so that you will go and receive the Lord in the Eucharist. Everything we do is in service of the Eucharist. And this is not a small thing. This is a big thing. We can't just say, you know what? Jimmy Swaggart's doing a good job. Yeah, in many, many ways, Jimmy Swaggart is doing a good job. But he is not going to get anyone to receive heaven in the flesh, to receive the ultimate full fulfillment of the human person, which is the Eucharist. We have to do this. Pope Paul VI said we have a duty to do it because every other person has the right to receive it. That means if we don't do it, we're violating their rights. In a certain sense. I mean, that's a little extreme the way I said it there, but in a certain sense, they have the right to receive Christ in the Eucharist. If we're not inviting them to it, we're failing. to tell them what they have the right to. And many of them are our brother and sister Christians who we love. We don't want to win an argument. We want them to receive Christ in the Eucharist. That's what we want, ultimately. I don't care if I win the argument. I care that you have what I have. My life is meant to be a mission in service of communion. Now, I want to finish with one last thing about Peter. Because at the very end of Christ's earthly ministry, of course, he walks with Peter. That's the end of John's Gospel. He says after he feeds them fish, they've been out fishing all night, and he feeds them fish. I mean, couldn't get donuts. He had to eat fish. It couldn't be ham and eggs because they didn't have ham. But this the whole idea of the fish is the tender care of the Lord. The Lord's so kind that he makes breakfast for us. It's pretty hard to be kinder than that. That's your grandmother level of kindness. So this is Jesus tenderly caring for his sheep. And that's what he says to Peter. Peter, do you love me? You know that I love you, Lord. Well, the problem here is that 3 times Peter has denied him. And so now 3 times Jesus asks him, do you love me? This is an act of healing that's going on here. He's healing what was broken. But do you know that Peter denying Jesus, do you know that Jesus never asked Peter to do anything? It's not like Jesus said, when I get to Jerusalem, I want you to go around telling everybody that you're my follower. He didn't even ask Peter to come with him. Peter chose to. Your friends tells you they're going to die for you. Here's 2 things you might try. Thank you. Or, I love you. I'm sorry that you have to do this for me. Peter didn't do either of those things. So now Jesus 3 times. Peter, do you love me? You know I love you, Lord. Now, Catholics tend to use this passage to say, well, this is him being commissioned as Pope. And that's partly true and partly not true. I mean, the whole ministry with Jesus is commissioning him as, you can see there's many, many ways that this happens, this interaction. This is kind of the capstone of that. But it's not untrue, but it's not the only way to think about this. And I want you to think about it a different way for just a quick minute. What is Jesus doing when he's asking Peter, do you love me? I'm going to suggest something shocking here. What he's doing is asking if Peter loves him. Because he wants to know if Peter loves him. The Lord doesn't need anything. He's God. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need me. But he came all the way down from heaven and became a man. And as a man, he needs his mother. He cannot survive outside of her womb. And then he needs his father to teach him and to care for him and to show him and to correct him. Not from sin, but just from mistakes. That's not the way we drive a nail. We do it this way. That kind of thing. Every man needs friends. You cannot be a grown man without men and women who are your friends. Jesus, if he chose to need everything that a human being needs, chose to need friends, and he's asking his friend, do you love me? And he wants to hear, I love you, because we all want to hear, I love you. Jesus has a human heart. The ultimate end of all of this is this friendship with Jesus where he chooses to need us. It's mind-boggling. It's beyond everything else he does to choose to need his own creatures. Not just to like us, not just to love us, but to need us. This is the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Totally vulnerable to whether or not we will say yes. There's more joy in heaven over the repentance of one sinner. You all have heard that. Have you ever thought about that? That that's not actually possible? There can't be more joy in heaven? Heaven is perfect joy? How can there be more joy in heaven? There can be more joy in heaven because Jesus has a human heart. And a human heart can feel joy. And it gives him personally in his heart joy when his friends love him. When those who abandon him return to him. When those who messed up just trust in his mercy and come back and say, I'm sorry, Lord, I messed up. I want to be your friend again. Will you be my friend? I would go so far as to say that Jesus himself loves that we're here together. Because he loves it when his friends are together. He loves to be with his friends. This is the weird secret of heaven. It's not just adoring God and worshiping God as tiny little creatures. It's friendship with God, where he elevates us to his level because he made himself need us. This is what we have to offer in this Catholic media revolution moment we're having. We need to remind the world of this Lord, the Lord who came all the way down, so that he needs us. He loves you. He loves that right here in Little Rock, Arkansas, something that's happening in cities around the whole world because the Holy Spirit is moving. You're not here tonight because you thought it was a good idea. We are here together because Jesus needs us as his friends. He gave us a mission as his friends, and the Spirit fills us with the love of God so that we can be friends to one another and we can reconcile the whole world to friendship with God again. We can do that. He has given us the power to do that. He's saving souls in Turkey because some people in Michigan thought, we want to start a Catholic radio station. God bless you all for what you came here to do tonight. It's going to succeed. It's going to be a wonderful, glorious success. And I'm so grateful that I told you I was a cheerleader. I told you I was going to cheerlead for Catholic radio. Bravo to all of you. I think this is the part where I'm supposed to mention this little QR code. But dude, put the money in the envelope. Click the QR code. More than anything, when you pray your rosary together at home, add this to your litany of things that you pray for, all the fallen away children and all the things that we all share. We all know what it is. Add this local Catholic effort to produce a radio station. It's not going to just transform this local community. It's going to be part of a great work of the Holy Spirit that's transforming the whole world. I am so grateful that I finally got my plane to land here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I can be with the friends of Jesus tonight. Thank you all very, very, very much.